Welcome to the Kings Beat
Huh,
podcast.
off to a roaring start already, are we?
I'm
Good
James
God.
Ham, the Kings Insider for ESPN 1320, the Kings Beat. Joining me today, KCRA 3, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking over at my pal Brenden. He's reminding me baseball season's right around the corner, and he's not wearing like a Giants hat that is like
Stupid and backwards and
blue
upside down.
or orange. Well, orange I guess would work. Like red.
A
He's wearing one that's
Cardinal
actually
A's
like the
hat.
real Giants hat. Yeah, upside down logos. He's got two of them. That's ridiculous. By the
Ridiculous.
way, actually, Brendan, you're the perfect. This is perfect to start with. Did you see how the spring training, like the Cactus League hats,
You would
are?
love the green one. Yes, the Cactus League hats are sick, Sean.
They
I've
are
been
sick.
wanting to get one.
Well, and it's right up your alley. I mean, at least, but this, well, maybe it's not because this is like a true hat that they wear on the
Relax.
field. Yeah,
Relax.
but it looks as if it's not. So that's why I feel like you would like it. But
Okay, before we get too far into the show, we're also joined by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast or whatever.
what is that?
True.
Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. This is the second podcast of the week. It's a
Wow.
GD miracle. It's a
It is.
miracle.
And it's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a two per week
Well, that's what it was like 4 years ago, 3 years
when the
ago.
team was
4
decent.
years. Wow.
Yeah, no, I think we've
Back
doing
when I
this
wasn't
for-
part of the pod.
No, like how long have you been part of the pod?
I don't know. It's whenever Sean wasn't allowed to do it anymore. I got invited on. It's
Okay,
great.
yeah, but how long have you been part of coverage?
Tyrese's first year. So that would be
That's
what, 5 seasons? 4
That was your
seasons?
first year. That was your first year.
Tyrese's first year when Luke got fired in my first year.
2021 season?
I believe so.
So you know what it's like to have a player go at you in the post game.
Hey, me and Tyrese were cool, man.
Yeah. You're the
All
apple
right.
of his eye.
Well, welcome into the podcast. If you're new to the show, we light podcast candles. We're weird like that.
Oh,
We also
yeah.
talk about a bunch of things that don't matter. Sean has a new shirt today. What is that one? Oh, that's that's the offensive one towards me. I remember
That's
the
not
white ginger.
offensive.
The white ginger.
Sean, let's see your shirt. Show
My
everybody
shirt. You
your
wanted to
shirt.
see the shirt on YouTube. Shout out Alyssa Lou. Here we are.
Hell yeah.
Hell
Build
yeah,
my list.
that is a very, very cool shirt.
Had to make my new shirt purchases for Bottle Rock and festivals coming up. I was like, yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, they're your festival shirts. I see. Some people have Festivus. Sean has Festival.
Year round.
The loser.
Year round graphic tees. They got
That's
to be
right.
topical.
That's right. Year-round top black t-shirts and a black Hurley hat. That's all Sean wears.
Where do you buy the shirts, Sean?
None of your business. They don't. I have to spend money there, so
What a
they
loser.
don't deserve a plug. But no, it's not all black t-shirts. But
You'll answer the question off camera. You just don't want to give the sauce to everybody.
That's
not to
right.
everybody. Yeah, this is like the sauce, the secret sauce, if you will.
Okay.
I may know a guy.
You may know a guy. I think we all know a guy about something.
My goal is to get the Malik Monk double bird. Well, I'm not going to do it on the camera here. The double bird that he gave me earlier in the year. Put that on a T-shirt. He wants one too, so I'm going to make sure to give him one. But that will.
Is that the
will...
golf event?
She should
No, that was one of the many double birds I've had from Malik. But no, the one this year where he came right up to the camera and it's fantastic. I think it was in December, probably December.
I have a business opportunity for you right here, Sean. You make the Malik Monk double birds. You go out and you buy like 10 Letterman jackets at bulk cost, and then you have a big you have them embroidered onto the back of the Letterman's jackets, and then you sell them to Malik for like $2,000 a piece.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. He'd probably buy it, actually.
Of course he would.
He got well compensated not all that long ago, and he likes crazy fashion. Should have seen what he was wearing last night. That was a pretty good one. I don't know how I could. Precious Achua had shoes that had probably. I asked him, and I think I'm getting it right. 7 different laces on them.
It's the
one shoe.
Kyries.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
What?
It's really
Yeah.
cool. Look.
What? Why do you need that many laces? I don't understand.
Because you
It's
can.
called
Because you can,
style.
James.
I
Because you
guess.
can.
I
Yeah.
guess. All right, we're here today because weird stuff happened at the Kings game last night. We're doing it, and this is an emergency pod of sorts.
No,
But
it's not.
the Kings are 14-50 and become more and more and more unwatchable as we go along this season. But last night we had like a different situation. I don't know. Like I've covered this team long enough. Sean's covered this team long enough. even Brenden was there for like some funny moments like this with Tyrese Halliburton early on. But I probably should have loaded the clip and we could have just played it. But Russell Westbrook decided to make post game the Rush show. And I just want to, let's just start there. First of all, Sean dipped out to go to the locker room and missed the magic.
I did.
But Brenden and I were there, and then Sean was back for the aftermath, and of course he had a camera rolling, so he's seen all of it. He's had conversations about it. Like, let's start with Brenden. Brenden, where were you at mentally while you're watching this unfold?
Where were you when?
Yeah. I think a lot of my takeaway is that it's more large picture. I felt like Russ was obviously very targeted and specific about Kings media and what it meant this season and how this season's coverage has been. But to me, a lot of it related to media as a whole nowadays. And I think there are a lot of moments where people speak as if they know more than they do. And to the point of knowing that player as a person, or it goes beyond Russ, like knowing somebody as a person. I think it's important to keep in mind that we don't know these people. You know, we know them as basketball players. We know what they want us to see, essentially. And so while I think there were moments where, for example, when Russ said, "Hey, you guys are acting like you expect us to win a championship." Like, I don't think that's the case. I remember being on this pod and saying we were predicting our records for this season and the highs and lows. And I think at one point I flirted with the idea of my low being 26 or something like that. And you guys pushed back of, hey, that's a little crazy. You know, like we didn't expect them to win a championship. We just didn't think they would be the worst team in the NBA, which they are easily. Maybe like 2 games between. There's a clear bottom 5, and the Kings undoubtedly belong in that tier. And I think that's where maybe I disagreed with Russ a little bit. But for the most part, I do think that his larger point, I understand when it comes to the media landscape as a whole. I think there are a lot of moments where they get talked about, meaning the players, as who they are as people, when that's not something we're really the most tapped into, to be honest. Again, we know them as basketball players, what they bring to the court, and potentially a little bit like what they bring to their teammates as well. But certainly a moment that caught my eye, I would say, and one of those where you're sitting there like, this is, you know, for a very forgettable season, this is going to be one of those moments that you remember.
I think probably is the most memorable moment. To be honest with you, I felt bad for Chris Biederman because Chris didn't, like, the mic got handed to him and didn't know what to say, while Russ put him like a really awkward situation. And I thought Chris tried to like answer the question that Russ was throwing at him. But at the same time, like, look, I didn't expect them to be this bad. Nobody expected them to win 50 games, at least no one that I know. Like, there are people who thought, oh, they might win 45, but they're a 14-50 team. Like, I think taking something out on the media like what we saw last night, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I'm also going to say this. When you cover a team like we do, I don't go around and listen to everything that everyone says about this team. Like, I know what I know about this team. I have my opinions on what I know about this team. I have podcasts, I write, I go on the radio, and I talk about this team. I have discussions, I have arguments, like debates, whether it's with you guys or D'Lo and Casey. But at the end of the day, like, I consume enough content of the Kings without going out there and listening to every single thing that everybody else says. I do think that we have got to a point where there is a lack of accountability for a lot of people. And I don't think it's just the Kings. I think it's everywhere. And I don't think the Kings have helped themselves by making media coverage more and more and more restrictive. But I also would tell you that, like, if someone wants to come at me, which Russ did for a second last night, like, I'll stand my ground, because I walk into a locker room every single pregame. Every single pregame, I walk into the locker room And if a player has a problem with something that I've said, I am accessible as much as they are. Actually, I'm more accessible because they don't show up in the locker room most of the time, and I do, and Sean does, and Brenden on occasion you're there. On occasion, Tony Harvey is in there, but there are other people who don't do that. And so if a player has a problem with you, that's how you're held accountable, by being there in the locker room and allowing a player to say something to you. And to be honest with you, we had a situation earlier in the season where me and Sean were in the locker room late after a game. Zach LaVine wanted to say something to me. I stood there, had a conversation with Zach. It was totally reasonable, totally like back and forth. Like we had a discussion. We didn't have this weird thing where you're literally calling people out and not actually saying what your problem is. We had a good discussion. We walked away from that discussion with a better understanding of each other as people and with a better understanding of the situation. And that's part of being a journalist and part of having a media credential, in my opinion. And I think we've lost some of that. And again, I'm going to put it on a little bit of it, just like the difficulties of going through the pandemic and having everything stripped down and then really not getting back ever to where we were before. But at the same time, like I do think that there's a lack of accountability. And I don't know what everybody says out there, but I certainly think that I've seen enough clips where I go, whoa, I don't think I would have said that. And I say a lot of things. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all offer different perspectives, and I think especially from last night. I mean, you've got James, who's covered the team forever, Brenden, who's still, in the first few years of covering a team, and myself, who wasn't in the room, saw the interview, but also doing the room because I wasn't in the room. I was in the locker room. They trotted out Drew Eubanks. I had no interest in talking to Drew Eubanks. Locker room opened, and I went to the locker room to talk to the people that I was hoping to talk to, which ended up being Malik Monk and Precious Achiuwa. Being in the locker room after talking to Malik, I'm talking to Precious and Russ, and you can hear it in the video. Russ comes by and says, "Yeah, I got you, P," or something like that, talking to Precious Achiuwa. And he had just came in and did his post-game media session. So by the time I come back, Doug Christie is just beginning his session, and they're talking. I have a couple text messages on my phone, and I'm at first glance at my text messages, I'm thinking they're talking about something that Russ did on the court, because I'd seen the moment that he had with the young man on the Pelicans who took the final shot, and he had a message for him briefly after the game and put his arm around him, and they had a close conversation. That obviously wasn't it. So after reviewing the tape and then seeing the likes of my colleagues coming up and saying, what would you have said? What would there's a dynamic in place where you have somebody who's at a podium that has a microphone in front of them at all times. They wait for a microphone. The media has to wait for a microphone to be passed around to talk to a player. That's all out the window when Russ starts asking questions like that. And what the tragedy is, we still don't know what Russ is talking about. We don't know what gave Russ the inspiration to pipe off at some of these media members and ask them their opinions in this post-game media session, which is never about the journalist. And so for Russ to do that, there's a couple things that come to mind in my mind, which is this is a human to human interaction. You don't need to wait for the fucking mic to be passed around to talk to you.
I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And some did. But to the fact that only one person had asked and he didn't want to go down, he says, "What did I say?" No one asked him, in order for me to respond to you, I need to know what you are talking about. So, Russ, what are you talking about? What is the instance? What is it that has this either inaccuracy? Is that reporting? Is the narrative of an opinion wrong? Clearly, there's something that has promoted you to stand up here and take a leadership role for your team, because it didn't sound like it was directed at Russ. So, what is it? And all we're left to do now, both media, fans, people who cover the team all around the country, are now wondering what it is that Russ is talking about. I can tell you this much: for all the emphasis and focus on your young players and your rookies, being that you've lost 50 games at this point in this NBA season, and you are the worst team in the league, there's no longer a focus on your young players and how they played in that game, how they're developing. Now the focus now is on Russell Westbrook and the media, and now spotlighting even more so the toxic and awful situation this season has been for this team. And that's, I think, the biggest tragedy of it all, because now it has taken that focus away from those players. Look, we've all been there. Reporters will have an interaction with a player. Player will come at them sideways based off of something that has been said, reported, something inaccurate, maybe something that isn't completely contextualized or even shine a light on in the right way, and further context is needed or a different opinion is needed. And as James kind of laid out there with one earlier this season, I can't tell you how often that's happened. I think also,
I mean, we went through a DeMarcus Cousins phase, just so everyone knows. Spent 6.5 years covering DeMarcus Cousins and him going, hey, come here. And you go over and talk to him and you have a discussion. Go ahead, Sean.
But Russell Westbrook is not a G leaguer, a first-year player. Like, these people should know who Russell Westbrook and what his career has been, the history of Russell Westbrook, meaning that there are contentious moments within the media when he deals with the media historically, whether it's on a losing team or a good team. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be ready for that. And I don't think our media corps was necessarily ready for that. Could that have been because they were waiting for a microphone to be passed around? I don't know. But at that point, be damned the audience who has to listen on this microphone or get the right audio for everyone who's at recording that's patched into the audio board to get clean audio. You can answer his question. And the whole question that I would ask is, Russ, what the hell are you talking about? What
he was asked that question very specifically, and
he needed to be asked again. And he needed to be asked again. He needed it to be asked again, especially because he's sitting there calling you, calling Matt, calling Chris Biederman. He's pointing the finger at a lot of people. Again, I wasn't in there. I might have had one come my way. And if I had, I'd say, Russ, in order for me to have a conversation with you, I need to know what the hell you're talking about. So what is the inaccuracy? What is the false narrative? Now, I will say this. I'm not blind. I'm not an idiot. I see what's out there in both the ether of sports media, this landscape of hot takes, people trying to become internet famous, whether they are credentialed media or not. There's a lot of stuff that gets populated out there, and a lot of it is cringeworthy. And look, some of it comes my way. Some of it is stuff that I've created. No one's perfect, but you see enough of it. I just don't know which one to be able to specifically talk about. If I had been asked, if Russ had said, hey, Sean, what do you think is some of the cringiest stuff you've seen this season? I could give you a laundry list. I'd kick my feet up like that otter that I love to send all my friends in an emoji, and I could let it fly and let you know all the stuff that I think is cringy and not necessarily journalistic quality. But in the same take, I would also say, my job is to report about your basketball team, talk about your basketball team, analyze your basketball team, and interview other people and have insight about your basketball team, not only about the here, the now, and the past, but the future. So all those things being said, like, I'm sorry, Russell Westbrook represents the very present of the Sacramento Kings, and he's very much responsible, just like the other members of this organization, for a 50-loss team. I don't know where he is in the future, but it did take the emphasis and focal points away from that future.
Yeah, and I would add this too. He talked about this as if he was the leader of the team and he was protecting his guys. That's where he lost me, to be honest. That's where I thought it got extremely disingenuous, extremely, because I see a lot of stuff that's out there. I don't see people going. There's one player that I think takes abuse on this team, and that's Precious. I mean, not Precious. It's Devin Carter. Outside of that, like, this has become like a really, like, you have to search for the positives in a 14-50 season, or everybody tunes you out. And so when I'm sitting here covering a game, like, I'm honest. 6 quick thoughts. I'm honest. I'm straightforward with my 6 quick thoughts. But at the same time, the primary focus is on the young players, and all of that is positive that I've seen. Like, we got into, like, the earlier podcast we did this week. You guys both talked about, hey, I still don't know if Max Reynaud is an NBA player. I don't know if Nate Clifford is an NBA player. That's being honest and watching the game and saying, like, we've seen so many players like them and their player arc and all that stuff. But that's not digging in and like ripping to shreds a young player. I haven't seen any of that. And it's him and DeMar DeRozan that are the two veterans that are playing. A little bit of Malik Monk, and everybody loves Malik Monk. There's not a bunch of negativity aimed at Malik Monk. Most of the negativity that I've seen is about 14 shots in a first quarter by Russell Westbrook. Or last night, I tweeted out in the first 5 minutes of the game, there wasn't a single shot from a player under 36 years old in the first 5 minutes of the game. That's not acceptable. What's happening? If this is supposed to be about bringing along the young players, how about you pass it to the young players and let them shoot the ball? And so for me, there is like, is that snarky enough to warrant him coming at me? No, not at all. That's just it's a true statement. You look at the box score, not a single shot from a player under 36 years old. And I'll add this element to it. I do walk in there every day. And Russ is in there every single day, and he's there for almost the entire media session. And he won't say a word to anybody. Not at all. He has his earbuds in. He came in on, we had Tuesday and Thursday games. He came in on Tuesday with a big ice pack on his eye. I said, hey, is your eye okay? Everything good? Yeah. Blew me off. Last night, came in with an ice pack again. I stood 2 lockers down and had a basic general conversation with Killian Hayes about where he lived, where he grew up in France, about his journey, just having a conversation. Russ was 2 seats, 3 seats down, wouldn't say a word. Even when directly asked something, wouldn't say a word. So if you have a problem, there is a way in which you can have a conversation with somebody. But that's why when he decided to like, what about you? I'm just like, I don't know. What do you want to know? Like, I've covered this team forever. I've covered the NBA for a long time. This is the worst season I've ever seen in Sacramento. I didn't stammer. I didn't stutter. I didn't mince words. And he moved right on to the next person because that's not what he was looking for. He was looking for something totally different in that situation. And I wasn't there for it. And Sean, you wouldn't have been either. So
well, I think
this isn't about Brenden. I'm not putting you in that discussion because
you're fine.
Russ didn't go at you in that situation. But for me, I was like, hey, all right.
I think it also everyone can have their opinion, but I think it's important to remember that opinion is not fact. Like there are facts and you can base opinions off fact, but everyone's entitled to an opinion and you may disagree with opinion. If you're reporting something as fact that's inaccurate, that's like the cardinal sin of journalism. So calling that out, and if you can't sit there and if you can't let that person know what he said inaccuracies, what is inaccurate, what's inaccurate that has been reported, that would, as a journalist, that would be the most damning thing for me, is to report something that is inaccurate. I need to know so I can quickly correct that and go about the process of doing so. And so again, I think Russ didn't do his team a favor. I think he may have been well intended. I don't know that it went exactly the way he wanted. I will say this from a outside observer, from a basketball standpoint, if this was happening on the Houston Rockets, I'd be thoroughly amused. I am thoroughly amused, but because I am a part of this media corps, I don't know who he was speaking to, and I can't speak to what he is as someone who covers the team. I don't know what got his, everything kind of to a peak level. I will say this: I do like the fact that it did not, it didn't get uncivil, it didn't get profane, it never reached a boiling point. Some of the headlines of epic rant or tirade or blasting off or anything like that, or scorches earth, there was none of that. There was a discourse, and it was hard to have a discourse when one party doesn't know what was said. And maybe one of those individuals did know what was said that crossed the line, but we, the three of us, have no idea.
The thing I'll add, and I guess leaning into my newer perspective compared to you old farts, is that getting into the industry, I think that there was a lot of realization of, first of all, there's a handful of people within this that I think shockingly don't know basketball in the extent that you would expect them to. and I don't want this to come off as a shot at any other local media or anything like that, but I think that's a general statement. And the other part would be just how normally human these players are. And you would think that that is a common understanding, but the way that you see the discourse on social media, which again, I understand is vocal minority and things like that, but like it was fairly early into me doing this where I was like, man, the way that these guys are talked about is kind of crazy because they're really just normal dudes. Like, could sit there and like I think I had a decent relationship with Keon, for example, and I'd sit there and talk about 2K with him. Like it's the most random, normal BS that you would talk about with your friends. And I think that that gets lost in this entire thing. And to me, I think Russ's points when it comes to the larger media landscape, and if you want to do the new media thing, I see some of it that there are 100% people that are making it about more than basketball or talking about who they are as people when the reality is like we don't know these guys. It's the extent of I know you, like I said earlier, as much as you want us to know you, or I know you as a basketball player. Like I'm sure people could think of coworkers that they would say that they know, but they're not friends with. Like you don't really know the full extent of them. I think I know you three or you two, um, but that's certainly not the same level as if I would say that I know some of these players. Like it's just a very different level, I guess. And I think that gets lost so much as maybe I guess I'm sounding like an old head a little bit, even of like the people act like they know these guys and they have opinions on who they are as humans. And I think sometimes that's a little bit crazy because especially again, not to put us above other people, but like people that have never spoken to them in their lives and you're sitting there and talking about who they are as a human, like that is insane. And I think there is just an aspect of how much social media has taken over this entire landscape of people acting like they know these guys. And it's just, I think that was Russ's larger point, or at least a lot of what I took from it at the beginning. He lost me a little bit when he goes into the whole, what, you guys thought we were going to win a championship? No, we just didn't think we were going to be the worst team in the league. But I do understand part of the aspect of, hey, there's some people that take this further than basketball and act like they know us when really that's not the case.
Yeah, I think there's always a danger in that. I also like I'll go back to like the thing I talked about early on about like the pandemic changed a lot of things. Like there were in the 2010s, Sean and I knew the players a lot better than we do today. There's a couple of players that you get to know, and there's a couple of players like again, like DeMarcus Cousins or like right now, Demonis Sabonis. Sean, you've gone out to his winery, you've spent a little bit more time with him. It used to be commonplace. Like I would hang out in the locker room for 30 minutes in every pregame. I would have conversations with Omri Caspi, with Darren Collison, with whether it was Jason Thompson or any of the young players. DeMarcus Cousins, you got to know really well over the course of years, but it took a long time. And for me, that was always like one of the better aspects of this job. It was almost like the sociology experiment, right? It's that I'm who I am, and I've been raised where I was raised and around the people I was raised with, and whether it's religion or culture or, geographic location, whatever it might be. Like to hear De'Aaron Fox tell me that he loves the weather in Houston so much better. He loves the wet, uh, humid heat. You just look at him like, man, you are crazy. But there was this aspect to it where you could go in and watch the communication between the players, be part of some of that communication when you're just talking to people, and it created an ability to write better stories, to tell more of what's going on and all that stuff. And now I think a lot of that has gone away. And to me, it's a bummer because you do have this detachment from players, and sort of this divide between who is media and who is not, and who is a player and who is not. And it's just, it makes it more difficult. But at the same time, that's why, again, I think accountability, you got to show up. You got to be there. That's part of what Russ was saying. Is like, you're not in our film study. It's like, yeah, but nobody's in your film study. Come on.
Yeah.
But then it
Those
was like,
aren't-
well, you're not at our practice. It's like, well, we get let in at the last second. And, for sure, for 2.5 years here, I had a radio show that limited how many practices I could go to. But I made up for that by going into the locker room every day and making sure that they saw me. And if they have a problem with me, they can talk to me. And
Yeah.
and even if not a problem, if they just want to like get to know me better or to have discussions, I've always been available. And,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think is lost here.
And beyond that, like the media access periods for people who don't know, like James hit it right on. It's like making yourself available to be approached or to talk to people. And you have your practices, you have your game days, your pre and post game availabilities, you have the warm ups of being around the court and being seen when they're warming up. You're looking at the other team. You have availability at shoot around. You have, especially for people who aren't on the road, these are moments to put yourself around the team in hopes and efforts to routinely interact with these players. And I mean, look, the media parameters for teams in the NBA and across other sports, they are what they are. But you shouldn't be limited to just those parameters. I mean, everybody has a representative, everybody has a manager, everyone has a guide, everyone has a family member, there's all kinds of ways to reach out and make sure that you have some sort of dialogue or constant communication with somebody. That said, I'm just going to be completely honest. There's a lot of people that don't have that desire to want to even not take it that far, but they don't even want to have the interactions. And I think some of that is becoming a little bit more commonplace within media in general. Is that the dialogue, the discourse, the putting your face in front of coaches, athletes, executives, agents, all that kind of stuff is becoming more and more common, and I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah. Brennan?
Yeah, I mean,
James just goes, "Hey, Brenden, talk."
No, I mean, I agree for the most part. I guess I don't really have all too much else to add. I think that it's a lot of what I already said. I mean, I think that sometimes it's easy for people and media in specific to kind of get lost in thinking that they know these guys and keeping it in perspective that that's certainly not the case. Like I feel like I had a fairly good relationship with De'Aaron, for example, but I would never sit here and tell you that I felt like I knew De'Aaron as a person. Like I think that there is just an extremely different standard to that point. And even if you are, to what Sean is saying, reaching out to their agents and things like that, like you have to keep in your mind in context how much there's a reason they're saying the things they are saying, and just the relationship that you do have there. Like you're a reporter and you're talking to an agent, for example, to go in that aspect. And that does not mean that you know them as a person. Like there's just I think the context of all this is very important. And I would be very curious, like in the comments of all this, of what people think about all this, because I think we're getting very understandably and fittingly so, given what happened yesterday, but very into the weeds about how our sort of industry works in certain ways. But I think it's, yeah, just as somebody newer in this, there were a lot of moments very early on that were fairly eye-opening of like, oh, this is sort of how this goes, and seeing that things are very different than what I think the way that they are presented at times. And there's a different way that maybe not that you go about things, because still, like if I, for example, I don't think Devin Carter's been very good, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think he has been good just because I have to see him at practice or in the locker room or whatever. And honestly, Devin's never really in there, but like, I think there's a different standard, for example, that media have to hold themselves to when you have to confront these guys. But I place a lot of respect on people that are willing to still stand on their opinions. And then you still have to go be around them. Like I think I've been pretty vocal about not thinking that Doug has done a very good job this year, for example. And that's not going to mean that I don't show up to press conferences or anything like that. But there's a difference between, I don't know, maybe that's the wrong way to say that, but like I think it's a lot easier for fans to sit there and just critique and talk all their BS about these guys when you don't have to go sit there and confront them. And there's just a lot of value, and I think a lot that you need to put into making sure that there's a reason that you are saying what you are saying, and that if you were to get confronted, that you can stand your ground and be like, hey, this is why I think what I think. And not to get on a soapbox here, but I think that's a general problem in life in general. Like I think that if you have a strong opinion about something, there's a lot of people that will sit there, and if they get confronted, they're going to back down. And I'm not, whatever, everybody knows he was talking to Matt. I'm not talking about Matt here. This is a larger point, right? That there's a lot of moments just in life in general where people will feel the need to say something, have a super strong opinion, they get confronted, and they want to back down from it.
It's the
Like
worst thing you can do.
if you feel a type of way about something, Sean, I think you're freaking phenomenal at this for what it's worth. If you feel a way about something, that sit there and tell them to their face that you feel that way and have a conversation about it, you know? And I think that that's a lot of what Russ's point was in this scenario, and one of the flaws in everybody having a voice nowadays.
Well,
Yeah,
and also, sorry,
I
James.
I want to ask one question to you, Brenden. When you first started doing this, what did I tell you? Like, what did I tell you the job is?
When it comes to what? Sorry.
To covering a team. You show up every day.
Right.
It's not about getting famous. It's about grinding and being there every day and doing the work.
Right.
And it's why I respect Sean as more than any other television person in the market, because he's done that for 20 something years. And I respect what you've done. You show up every day and you do the job. It's not about getting famous. And if people want to say, oh, you're doing this and this, like, no, I'm not. I'm doing this because I want to provide the best coverage of the Sacramento Kings that you can possibly get. That's it. That's the reason why I do what I do. And if you have a problem with how I do that, well, then be a man and have a grown up conversation with me. But like this whole, like, we should be able to walk into like anywhere else. Like, we're supposed to be experts on this. And it's not easy to be an expert. You have to spend a tremendous amount of time of your life dedicated to knowing as much as possible. And you still don't know everything. You don't know everything that's going on. You don't know what's going on in players' lives. You know, like there was a game a couple of weeks ago where one of the assistant coaches was gone. Like, hey, why is so-and-so not on the bench? I was like, okay, he had a bad personal issue with the family member. Like, okay, that's it. Like, there are things that we know that we're not going to go out there and talk about, but there are also things that like we know so much about that you still can't put it out there because you don't know everything. And you also have to protect yourself in a situation. But I just think that doing the job, going out there and grinding and being there every day and doing the best you can to cover something is all you can ask. And I don't think everybody does that. That's my point of view. And it's the way that, like, when you were a young journalist, I was like, you're, under my wing. And I'm like, this is how I've done what I do. And that's the one thing I would impart to you. Just do the work, grind, because that's all it is. It's just like any other job. It's cooler to a lot of people, but it's just like any other job.
I think fans and media should also be reminded. I say it all the time. Social media is not a real place.
No.
It's full of toxicity, and it doesn't accurately take the temperature of your fan base. It just doesn't. I mean, look, you're going to see plenty of people in the stands wearing DeMar DeRozan jerseys, Russell Westbrook jerseys. They pay their hard-earned money to spend it however they see fit, and some of it is to come and watch two future Hall of Famers play, whether they're on a 50 loss team or not. Like, that's the motivation for some people to come and spend their hard-earned money, which, is expensive as it is, to come and invest their time and money with family, to all that stuff. So while it's easy to talk about tanking, and this is still an entertainment product at the end of the day, and yeah, a high draft pick might very well catapult this team into the quickest way to turn around their franchise. But in the here and the now, for people who are paying their hard-earned money, especially if they're season ticket holders that paid their hard-earned money at the beginning of the season, and now they're seeing some of those tickets go cheaper than what they purchased them for, it's tough. So the motivations for people and how they invest their time around a basketball team or a pro sports team or even a college team, whatever, is, it varies, it differs. And so when all you tune into social media and you see so much of this tanking nonsense, clearly the league is going to be doing something about it next year. I'm glad that they are, because it is a problem. It's been a problem. This year is probably reaching a crescendo, but just realize that. And when you have people that, like, you're paid millions of dollars, and there's guys that are literally shut down for injuries, I feel for someone like Zach LaVine in a sense, because the narrative on social media is that this guy is just totally mailing it in. That's a legit surgery on a finger. Look, everyone is different. Yeah, everyone wants to compare everybody to Kobe Bryant, who famously, had surgery and didn't have surgery and still played through his injury. De'Aaron Fox opting not to have surgery 1 year, playing through an injury. Just looking at your Kings history,
Domantas
Sabonis,
Sabonis. Yeah.
all the time doing it. Like, it reaches a point where you have to take care of the player, and it's these teams make investments with their players to, whether they're going to help them in the long term or even help another team in the long term. You can't trade a piece of damaged goods, and so you have to take care of your player. So that's just tough. That's just really, really tough. And you see where the season has gone. But just a real long-winded way of just saying everything you see from a media narrative, opinions, again, these are not facts. And social media is a place where these things just absolutely fester and thrive. And I think it can really, really warp somebody's view of what is truly going on, but also what surrounds a team. These people on the other side of it, athletes, executives, coaches, all these, they are human at the end of the day. These are jobs on the line. It's a serious nature. They get paid a lot of money for a reason, to be able to, kind of navigate and swim those waters. But there's also fans that eat all this stuff up. There's family members, and they have different motivations for coming to games. So I think that should be respected.
Yeah, that, and I think the money goes away super quick too. It's there, and they live a lifestyle, and then it's gone. Go ahead, Brenden.
I think the thing I was going to point out, there's a lot of reasonable basketball critiques about Russ on this current Kings team. And I think it's fair to point that out. And I don't think that's what he was responding to necessarily. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to sit there and be like, hey, this team sucks, right? Biederman told him as much to his face, and he had no issue with that. He's like, great, perfect, right?
I did too. I said the same thing.
Yes. Yep. And that's not the problem. Like, you can sit there and be like, hey, this team has 50 losses. We think that the fact that Devin Carter is not getting minutes and you're closing out games is just a wild way to go about things. That's fine, right? And if Russ disagrees, so be it. But that's a basketball take, right? And the issue is that when it goes beyond, when people are sitting there, hey, Russ is bad for the young guys. Like, if there's a basketball take about that and you're explaining the on-court product of, sure, he's not the most like pass first guy, right? You're going to see these one-footed leaners and things like that. And too often, honestly, in my mind, possessions where it's like, damn, nobody else touched the ball and you let it fly. But that first half, I think it was against Houston, where he's the one that kind of kept them in the game, and he shot 12 shots or whatever it was in that first quarter. Like, we've talked about it. They need to be in at least slightly competitive for the context of player development for these young guys to matter. And Russ at times is doing that. At times, maybe not so much. And moments where you would like to see the young players go. So I just wanted to add that I think there are very fair basketball on court, Kings specific rather than player specific criticisms that you can point towards Russ. And I don't think that was the point of what he was saying at all. I think when those got acknowledged, he had no issues with them. And there are things that you can point out and say that you think are flaws in how they are going about functioning as this franchise. But we also have the perspective of, we're thinking about next year. We're thinking about the year after. We're thinking about the long-term perspective of this team. And I don't know if Russ is or not. And like emphasis on the I don't know, right? Because is he going to be around next year? Who knows? But like, he has every reason to continue to try and build his legacy as a player. Like, he sat there before when he was a member of the Lakers and talked about how the whole Westbrook last name was such an issue, because guess what? I have kids with the same last name and they're getting shit for that at school. Like, I get that, but I think it's very fair to point out the basketball criticisms that we have had, that we've talked about on this podcast. And I think I just want to point out that that is not specifically, in my mind at least, what he's talking about in these moments.
Yeah, I would even add too, like when I said, I don't blame you for this season. And he's like, yeah, it's not my fault. Like, I get it. I'm not blaming Russ for the fact that the Kings are 14-50. He's part of an issue, but like the structural build of this team was wrong from the beginning. The other thing I want to point out too is that it's not just like what we say. So this podcast specifically, we don't do clips. We don't put them on Instagram. We don't do a bunch of like sound bites from the show. But that doesn't mean that the radio show that I was on didn't do sound bites all the time. And some of those sound bites got me in trouble. I mean, I went on 95.7 during the playoffs and like literally another Odyssey station that I work for. And I made the point that the Kings had the top rated offensive rating of all time. I said it's higher than the Golden State Warriors during their championship runs. I very quickly said, but I'm not saying their offense is better than the championship Golden State Warriors. But it's factually true that like this team was an outstanding offensive team, and they shouldn't just be disrespected and looked over. The tweet that went out from 95.7 The Game of the station that I work for was, according to James Ham, the Kings have the best offensive rating of all time, ... better than any of the Warriors championships, ... That's not what I said. I put context. I added it all into one giant statement, but I see the same thing when it comes to clips. I see the same. So we, even on, when I was on the Insiders, we had specific clips that went out, which one of those clips is what got to Zach LaVine and made him angry about me saying that the team quit. Well, I watched the game and I watched a team completely quit in the third quarter. Now, I didn't say Zach LaVine quit. I didn't say that DeMar DeRozan quit or the Russell Westbrook quit, but the team as a whole in that game gave up. They let go of the rope. They lost by 40-something. You can't tell me that you didn't quit the game in the mid-third quarter when you lose by 40-something. But still, the context of what I said was changed completely by a clip that was put out on Instagram. And so sometimes I do think that that's what they see. They see sort of these little sound bites that we say, and there's a lot of negativity that happens in those sound bites, and not all of those sound bites have any sort of context that make a difference.
Well, and as somebody that cuts those clips and posts them, like,
hold on, can I just say,
go ahead.
Entire time he was talking, I was like, boy, I wonder what Brendan's thinking right now.
No, that's good.
Well, I'll just say, like, it sucks. It sucks. I do think, to your point, James, the reason I love pods is because we can sit here and give 45 to, more often than not, an hour and a half, because Sean won't shut the hell up, of
and
context.
Talking to people in the chat and
and I
asking you about movies.
I might hate him for it, but I love him at the same time. But we can give context, right? But the nature of media nowadays, and I think this was my larger point that I was trying to make, is that unfortunately, that's what people want. Like, a lot of what we have to do is sit here and, hey, what pops? And those are the freaking things. And it's frustrating and it sucks. And I sit here and try to dance around those things and try to provide as much context as possible, as you gentlemen do. But that part's going to get cut out. And everybody's responding to these things without fully listening to everything that was said. And that's just the nature of, in my critique of the whole new media thing, right? As much as I'm very much a part of that, and I think there's pros to it, like, that's the big con. And that's the issue here. Again, as somebody that cuts these clips, that's a big part of my job and what I do. Like, that is definitely, it's what people consume. And so, not to sit here and blame it on all the audience, but if it's what hits, then how are the media companies that are paid for clicks not going to continue to doing so? And so I would just point to, I think the biggest thing is that if you are a consumer, make sure that you get the context of everything. And sometimes it's not going to be in those clips before you have your comments and you draw your conclusions. And I know that's a longer drawn out process, whatever. Maybe you don't give a damn enough to go and do so. But I think that so often that the context is not fully provided in the way that we get to do so in this long form content that we're doing right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I wrote a story during the Mike Brown back and forth when he was trying to get his contract extension. And I put in there a line that I almost took out. I almost took it out, but I had it from multiple sources that ownership was not happy with the way the season ended before, not specifically with Mike Brown, but they weren't happy about the way the situation ended the season before, where they got bounced, they had the injuries and all that stuff. That one line was pulled out of that story and it was put on NBA Central and it was put on Legion, whatever, Legion Hoops or whatever. And it was misquoted so badly that the Kings wouldn't talk to me for like 6 months at all. Wouldn't respond to a text. I was persona non grata. And I was right. And what I wrote was right. And they didn't want to give him an extension. And they did anyways, or at least the ownership didn't want to give an extension. And management talked him into it. And then they fired him 31 games into the season after giving him an extension. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, that's what part of our job is, to do that. And then part of our job is to deal with a player who has a question about things that we say. And a lot of times it's like, hey, man, how about we just pull up the article or we pull up what I actually said, because it's different. And I remember years ago, Dave Yeager pulled me aside after practice. He had, it was his first year there, and he had Chris Clark, the old media director, pulled me aside. I'm like, what's up? He's like, hey, and yesterday you wrote that Aaron Aflalo was a sieve on defense. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, you watched the game? He's like, yeah. I said, but also he literally talked to us after the game and told us that he was horrible on defense. He's like, oh, he said he was horrible? I said, yes. He goes, okay. Well, I was just having my guys back. That's what Dave said. He's like, so we're cool. But I wanted to make sure that, like, saying that someone's a sieve on defense, that's tough, man. I said, well, if he says that he was horrible on defense and I use a different word, that's fine. And he's like, no, I totally agree. And we moved on about our day. So there's an accountability thing that is usually in place that I think is being lost as we speak. And I it's part of the reason why I think yesterday happened.
But
I would
also,
point
if it was
to
your opinion. If it was your opinion, you know.
Yeah. Either I would have stood my ground
Even
either way.
still, even if Aaron didn't say that, yeah, it's like, if that's your opinion, and yeah, you can be talked into, you can just get somebody else's view, and you can report someone else's view and whatever else. But if you're in a position where you are reporting your opinion, that's your opinion. And if he's challenging that, the worst thing to do is unless he changes your mind, worst thing is to do is to apologize. And as long, again, don't get personal, but Aaron Aflalo was a sieve defensively when he was in Sacramento. He had no lateral quickness.
Why I'm
he was
wrong.
awful. Right.
Yeah.
Point to the lie. Where's the lie?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I would point to, not to make it about myself, but like the whole interaction I had with Tyrese, right, was, and anybody unaware, like he would constantly mess around with me about like, hey, how was my defense tonight? And that all started because I asked Luke Walton in a very rookie mistake way when it comes to journalism of, hey, you guys hide Tyrese on defense. So how are you going to go about that tonight? And funnily enough, I remember it was against the freaking Charlotte Hornets, but they had a lot of playmakers. Okay. Take it for what you will. But Tyrese wasn't super confrontational in the way he went about responding to that to me, because in my mind, there's a reality of, hey, you sucked at defense, dude. Like, and I don't think there was a flaw in saying that, because that's a basketball opinion, right? I'm not talking about him as a person. I'm saying something that is my 2 cents. And I felt like he probably agreed with me for the most part of that. He's not a great defender, and that's not his trademark in the NBA for what it's worth. That's not why he's a phenomenal player. But like, that was one of, I guess, those learning moments for me of like, it obviously has to do with who Tyrese is, I would say, as a person and how he goes about things. But I don't think that became an entire thing where Tyrese just didn't want to speak to me ever, because I wasn't super out of pocket with that in my mind. And I was saying something that was probably reasonable.
But correct me if I'm wrong. You also asked Tyrese about it.
Yeah, he confronted me like, well, that's a weird way to say that, but like in a later press conference said, "Hey, how was my defense tonight?" As
He
he
was
was
using.
walking off.
He used you as motivation.
100%.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it would have been more of a problem if I was sitting there being like, "Man, this guy just makes horrible decisions on the court." You know?
Well, that and Brenden, I'm going to add, like, when you were first doing that, you realized very quickly that you made a mistake in the way that you phrased a question.
Right.
And we also had moments where you're like, okay, I've got a question I'm going to ask Luke. What do you think of this question? I said, that is a paragraph long. Come back when it's a sentence
Yeah.
long. And it's like, okay, you refine yourself and you get better, and we're not perfect. We make mistakes, but you got three guys here who have the right motivation and the right purpose when they're doing this job. And like, not everybody has that, but I certainly think that, like, that's why I love doing this podcast, because I do think that we have the right motivations, the right intentions, and it's to do the job and to do it well, and to give our listeners and the people that follow us wherever they follow us the most insight that they can possibly get on the Sacramento Kings. And there's a cap to that. There's only so much we can tell you, because we can only glean so much, but we're trying to help you understand more about the game and more about the people that you're watching on the court, so you have that sort of connection. And like, we hope that, like, when you're arguing about the Sacramento Kings with your friends, that you're thinking about conversations that you listen to on this show about that, and you're bringing that to the table. So, all right, I've got to go on the radio, so we got to get out of here.
We don't get to talk about Precious Achua dropping 20.
29.
Yeah.
29 and
What a guy.
spectacular, and a good human. Good human. Do we have any quick final thoughts?
World Baseball Classic, Sean, you tapped in?
Yeah. Logan Webb starting tonight. That'll be fun.
Ooh.
The Rockland native. 5 or 6. I can't remember. You want to go watch it?
Well, maybe. You know, it's not why I asked the question.
You two are trouble.
Big grin on my face.
You go along with it, Brenden. So yes, you.
I might tag along sometimes.
You guys.
Sometimes.
All right, Sean, what do you got for final thoughts?
Well, what is final? You got conference basketball tournaments starting up. I know. I'm looking forward to that. In college basketball, I know the high school stuff is reaching they're what midway through the NorCal's, almost wrapping that up. Modesto Christian, I think, is just far and away the best boys team from our area. They're a lot of fun if you get a chance to see any of them. They're in the open division, so they got a tough road, but I think they're handling their own. To be honest, I need to make sure. I think they play tonight. I'm not sure who it is, but that'll be fun. Sincere Hudson, he's from Sacramento. He's on that team. He played at Indercom. He's a lot of fun to watch. What else? That's probably it.
All right. Yeah.
Are the Oscars this weekend, or are they next weekend?
Ooh, that's a good question. We have a game on Sunday, so either way.
What's your best picture for of the nominees? What would you go with?
I need to see the list in front of me.
I can tell you. There's like
Quickly,
10 of them.
We're down to like 2 minutes.
Like Sinners, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, Hamnet.
I'm going to go with Sinners because it's the only one I've seen.
God.
I thought it was good.
Not a bad one. No, it's not a. First of all, Oscars are next weekend, so we have plenty of time.
And I'm the same. I was the same with the Leo DiCaprio movie.
You're insane.
I liked it.
Do you know what that's on platform wise?
Yeah, HBO.
Yeah, okay. It is.
Or go to the movie theater, Brenden.
Shut up.
It's on HBO.
Go to the movies. Go to the movies, everyone. All right.
Will you make a promise, Brenden, that you will watch One Battle After Another before next Sunday's Oscars? That's the 15th.
Sure, because I've been meaning to watch that one actually.
So, the end scenes where they.
Oh, okay, that's enough, James.
Car,
you're done.
The undulating.
James,
just the race car scene.
Shut up. Let him be.
That's not a spoiler alert.
It is.
Yes. Cinematic brilliance. That's what
just say the end scene is amazing. That's fine. Just don't give him anything. Let him watch it.
Wild to watch.
Will he watch it in one sitting?
No. All right, we got a
Girls' bottom
jet.
promise.
Okay,
And
so
put your cell phone to the side. Don't even
Shut
keep
up
it
and let
near
him
you.
leave.
my final thought. Let's see. Final thought. This too will pass. Like that's
Oh,
it. Like
okay.
this
Calm
whole
down.
situation with Russell will
Wow.
pass.
So
It's
It
nothing.
got a lot of views.
It's
That video
nothing.
got a lot of views. It is nothing. At the end of the day, it's just the DeMarcus Cousins situations were much different and much more like in your face than that.
Those were
And
nothing
so,
too.
yeah, well, every once in a while there was something. But anyway, thanks for tuning into the King's Beat podcast. If you don't mind, subscribe to the channel. Thumbs up. Let's see, what else do we say? Go to thekingsbeat.com so you get the morning cup of Kings sent to you every day, all that stuff. And make sure you're paying attention. You're watching all of us wherever you guys get your consume your Kings news. Look at that. My first podcast candle. So for KCRA 3, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We will see you very soon.
Damn it.